Sadie Amelia. And that's a family name. That was my great-grandmother's name on my mom's side. And it was a name that was special to my mother because her grandma and her were really, really close. So it was my great-great-grandma, sorry. And anyway, because of the connection that my mom had with her grandma, who was Sadie Amelia, we felt it would be a special name to keep in the family and to use. So that's why we chose that name. And we had that name picked out even before we had conceived. So that made the whole experience even harder.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a podcast where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Lee Red, and on this episode, Matt is telling the story of his daughter, Sadie, who was stillborn. As a word of caution to our listeners, this story contains emotional triggers of stillbirth and infant loss. Please keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy and seek help if needed. Also, be aware that these birth stories may differ from his or her partner's, as these accounts are told from their own perspective, through the lens of trauma, heartache, and the passage of time. Please respect our mothers and fathers who are brave and gracious to share their children with us.
And I guess I'll start at the very beginning. It was 2014. During that year, so we were living in the Middle East. We were living in the United Arab Emirates, and healthcare was not the same as America.
Mm-hmm.
The way that communication is not the same as here in the United States. So we had some distinct challenges and unique situations that we had to deal with that would not be normal to living in the United States.
Now, is this communication between you and the physicians, or you and just the community in general?
Both. So, for example, we chose a hospital based on the facilities that they had. We did not take into consideration the communication with the doctors at all. And as the pregnancy progressed and we met with the doctors and the staff at the hospital, we encountered bumps with we couldn't get our desires across as clearly because we were communicating with non-native English speakers. Mm-hmm. or Indian, where their English was native, but it was a different English. And they had different customs and different ways of doing things. And because of that, we felt there was a lack of compassion at times. There was a lack of assistance in getting our desires met and our needs met, because they just didn't know. They're like, why would you want that? But so
you're in the AUE. You guys are pregnant, or are you trying to get pregnant at this time, or?
Yeah, we're trying to. So we picked out. We get pregnant, and we start looking for a hospital. With the facilities we want. There was a hospital close to where we were living, and it had a water birth facility there, which we really wanted. And so that's why we chose that hospital. And as we were going through the pregnancy, things were normal. We didn't know. We were ignorant. It was our first pregnancy. And I'll just jump to at around 30 weeks is when we had when we started noticing things. It was maybe a little earlier than 30 weeks. I don't know what the exact weeks was. We had an ultrasound done, and the baby was measuring small. And we just didn't think anything of it. The doctors tried to downplay anything. And in hindsight, looking back, we can go like, oh, that was definitely something that we should have been aware of that we weren't made aware of.
Yeah.
And then at 32 weeks, my wife Lindsay didn't feel a heartbeat. And she was trying to do kick counting and felt no movement. And so we went to the hospital and got an ultrasound done and talked to the doctors, and they're like, well, let's get a second opinion. We went the next day and got a second opinion, and there was no heartbeat. And our world just got flipped 180 in an instant, you know. It was the beginning of the absolute most difficult thing that I have ever had to go through, and it was hard. So once we found out, we went home and we prayed. We started seeking answers. And we started having to make plans of what are we going to do now. And as we in our planning, it was recommended to us that we go home to deliver, that we go to the United States to deliver. So we started making those arrangements, and the thing that stuck out to me the most in this whole process was the community that wrapped around us and lifted us and supported us on our journey and got us where we needed to be. So I'll say that I reached out to my ecclesiastical leader, and he reached out to his connections, and my wife reached out to some friends of hers, and of all the people that wrapped around us, we had somebody pay for our hotel the night before we flew out. We had somebody offer to pay for our plane tickets. We had a friend that he was able to get us airline tickets like that instantly for the next day, and we were able to have someone give us a ride to the airport and to our hotel, and just the whole process. We didn't have to think about making travel arrangements. It was all done for us. We didn't have to think about anything but our grief, and that was nice. And I'm so grateful for people who stepped up and were able to help in whatever way they were able to help.
So as you're flying from the UAE to, you live in Idaho, were you coming to Idaho?
Yeah.
Were you going to?
So it was a direct flight to Seattle, and then a flight from Seattle to Haley. And we landed in Haley. Actually, before that, I want to say that even the airline ride was, the flight attendants were great. You know, they didn't know what had happened, but the way that they acted, I think it put us both at ease, which was nice. And so we landed in Haley. Lindsay's parents picked us up at the airport. Her whole family wrapped around us and took us in and just comforted us and took care of us for what would end up being the better part of maternity leave. All of maternity leave, which was 60 days, I think, is what we were allowed. And so we flew in, and the next day we went to the hospital, and we checked in and started the delivery process. And I don't remember how long it was. It was a while, several hours. And as I stayed there the whole time. I didn't want to go anywhere. But it got to a point where the active labor was happening, and the doctor invited me to come and assist in some ways. I got the opportunity to cut the umbilical cord, which was new to me. I didn't know that if I wanted to or not, but I did it anyway, knowing that I would regret it if I didn't. And then after Sadie was born, I was offered to hold her for a little bit. And I got to be the first one really to hold her, and I didn't know if I wanted to. And I actually had to force myself to, knowing that I would regret it if I didn't. And I did for a few seconds. And now I wish I had held her longer. That's hard to have a regret like that.
It's such a, for myself, I couldn't cut the umbilical cord. They offered me to, but I couldn't sever that tie of mother and child. So you did something that I couldn't do.
Yeah.
Now, may I ask how Haley did pass away? How does she die?
It was, so when she was born, she had her umbilical cord wrapped, so from her abdomen, it went down behind her knee, came up and half hitched around her neck. And as she would extend her leg, it would cut off the oxygen, cut off her neck. And I believe that is the reason why she was stillborn. But we opted out of doing the autopsy, and therefore we don't know for certain that that's what it was. But it seemed pretty obvious.
Yeah. How long were you guys in the hospital with Sadie after the delivery?
It was only a day. I don't even think it was that. I mean, she was resting for a couple hours, 12 or 14 hours, I think, after the delivery. We were out of the hospital. It was pretty quick. I don't think we were there more than a day. And then we had to start making the arrangements for the funeral. And by this time, everyone that was going to be at the funeral had already known about it, and so it wasn't hard to get everything put in order. But again, I think I remember not doing a whole lot to get it organized. I think I signed documents, but I was in such a state of mind. Yeah. Other people took care of it.
It's a blur as a day.
Total blur. And I don't remember who did what, but I know that someone made a casket for us. Someone bought us a burial plot. And so it was all taken care of. I didn't have to worry about it, which was great, because I couldn't worry about it. I was somewhere else. My mind was somewhere else. within a few weeks, not a few weeks, within a few days after the funeral, I got the opportunity to go to work for my father-in-law, and he had projects he had me helping out with, shoveling snow and doing other things, working with my hands, getting physical labor in, and through that I was able to start to come alive again, and that was the most therapeutic thing I could have done at that time. I'm so grateful for the opportunity I had to go to work.
There is something magical about getting up and doing something. It helps the mind quite a bit.
It does. At least as a man, it does.
I think to everyone. So
yeah.
So how long ago was Sadie's funeral? It was 4 years ago.
So the delivery, her birthday, is November 14th. So there was snow on the ground, 6 inches of snow when we buried her, and it was 2014, November 14th, 2014. So it's been now 4.5 years, a little over. And in the time since, we've had counseling, which was really helpful. And we've had our ups and downs. And as I analyze the process, I would say that faith, religion has kept me grounded, kept us both grounded, and really helped us come closer together as a family. Without religion, without faith, I'm scared to think of where we would be. Probably not together. I think it's that important. And having people come around as family, counselors, people at church have helped to put everything into perspective and to help us grow from it, and to come away with a positive frame of mind afterwards. I guess that's all I have to say for now.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Many thanks to Matt for being vulnerable and sharing his story of his daughter Sadie with us. Head over to our website, stillapartofus.com. There, you can find the show notes, including a full transcript of the interview and any resources that were mentioned. You can sign up for our short and helpful email newsletter. There, you can learn how to become a patron and support the work it takes to produce this show for just a few dollars a month. And lastly, you can find out how to get in touch with us if you want to share your child's story on the show. The show was produced and edited by Winter and Lee Red. Thanks to Josh Woodward for letting us use his song, She Dreams in Blue. You could find him at joshwoodward.com. And again, subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend that might need it. And tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they are still a part of us. Don't worry about the world coming to an end today. It is already tomorrow in Australia. Charles M. Schulz.